My name is John Capo, and I'm the founder and director of Fear NYC. Thank you so much for coming out to our Masters of Horror panel. This is our first panel, the first time we've done this in the 2 years that we've been producing Fear NYC. So we're so happy that you're able to join us tonight. Today, it's not quite tonight yet. I want to introduce to you our moderator for today, JK, host from HorrorHappens Radio Show.
Thank you very much.
Then we have Tyler Hixson, a horror historian from the Brooklyn Public Library. We have Colin Adams-Toomey, whose film Lost Creek was in Fear NYC last year and won an award. We have Heather Buckley from Dread Central and Fangoria and many other wonderful things. We have Adrienne Lovette, director of Hidden Daylight, which was an award winner at last year's Fear NYC. And last but not least, we have Nicholas Tucci, one of the stars of the horror film You're Next. So Jay, before you take it away, I just want to let you know that following this panel, we have coming up a masterful interpretation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, starring acclaimed British actor Henry Goodman. Following that, we have a big
Flesh blanket, dude.
Woo! We have what I have labeled the biggest WTF film of the film festival, which is called Flesh Blanket, which is about a 500-pound comedian who's slowly losing his mind. Followed by that, we have a zombie double feature where we'll be screening 2 zombie films at 7 o'clock. And then at 9:30, we invite you to Night of the Living Dead, screened with a live score. So we hope you'll stay with us. We hope you'll come back tomorrow, and we hope you enjoy the panel. Have a great time.
The wonders of social media. You gotta get it out there, folks. Gotta get out there. As brought up, I am JK, not only with Horror Happens Radio, but also with Horror Hound and several other entities that I will name and not name at this moment. It's amazing to be here, and I thank John so much for having me in Fear NYC to be a part of this. And it's a huge undertaking when you're dealing with not only the aspect of 90 minutes of talk, because you want to fill every moment with things that are relevant for you, the filmmakers, the peers, the fans, everyone, but also the panelists who are so diverse. It's incredible. You go down the line, you have things that connect them, you have things that make them different, you have aspects that make them incredible and frightening at the same time. So, real quick, again, before we start, I want to thank you all, and I want to thank you all for coming out. Real quick. So, for me, I've been doing this 5+ years with the radio program, writing, being a part of the dysfunctional family, as I like to call it, here in the horror community. The last year, 2 years, really, for me, film festivals have become something personal to me. And the ever-changing landscape of what a film festival is really just mutating and evolving in front of us. New entities like Netflix and Amazon are coming in, Shudder is coming into play, and they're picking up properties like that. For those who don't know the relevance, that's where we're going to kick it off, really. With the aspect of film festivals like Fear NYC and New York City Horror and Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, and it's fantastic, within a 2.5-3 hour drive from each of them here. Film festivals may be in danger. We have filmmakers, we have peers, we have a lot of amazing talent up here that have been involved in different parts. Amazon, Netflix, and you can go back to May earlier this year, recent ones like South by Southwest and Sundance bought up 40, 50, 60 properties easy. All the films that you're seeing here soon may become a monopoly to be able to get a hold of them with these companies, because they're going to send them right to VOD. One of the properties in general, and I had a chance to see it twice, at Boston Underground Film Festival, as well as Fantasia, was Most Beautiful Island. You two were involved in it. Heather sits there, has a nice cup of coffee, and you see her in all of her splendor. And we have our bouncer over there, Mr. Nicholas Tucci. The film is incredible. It's done, it's story embraced. It's about immigration, it's about the struggle of one woman, it's about this dark, seedy side of this city that you're in right now. It also was bought up pretty quickly, as soon as it went through Sundance, or South by Southwest, if I'm correct, which is great for the filmmakers, but getting availability for it, like we saw where after Boston Underground this past March, it was not available for anyone to see. So here's the first question for you to talk about. As filmmakers, as journalists, as historians, and whatever else you might classify yourselves as, is the aspect of the film festival in danger?
I don't think
Once
it
like
is.
this? Why?
I was going to jump in right away.
Go ahead.
Is because what they're actually doing, and all these movies are playing film fest. They're actually buying the curation that South by Southwest is doing. So you need someone to curate these things and say these things are good, and then one of these big firms are going to come in. It's like, well, South by Southwest said all the stuff is good.
Right.
Well, let's buy it right now. And what it affects the windowing when it comes out. Because generally you want to go like, so you can just watch it in Film Fest, and people go to the Film Fest. Oh, we're just now going to do like a 12-city run.
Right.
And then people will watch it then. But you don't know when it's going to go on VOD. But now that they've revealed the end game, people just go like, I'll wait for it to go on VOD. So I think it might affect people wanting to see it in the theater. But I think film fests are important because they're the tastemakers. Like a film like That Most Beautiful Island is considered to be a prestige film because it will do the film fest run. And I think without saying it was in a film fest, that it did a film fest run, it's like that helps the marketability of it. So I don't think it affects.
It's interesting you say how, they're spearheading, they're overseeing these projects, because I went to Fantastic Fest. And 1922, Gerald's Game and Wheelman were big properties out there for Netflix. And 2 out of the 3 were a shit show when it came to the fact of doing press and PR and getting them out there. It was really a new world. Now maybe in time, everything will smooth out, they'll work out the kinks in the system. But for that also, and this comes from people like Mitch Davis, this comes from people who are running Fantastic Fest, it may actually cause an issue in getting those kind of films into the programming and seeing that you're being able to see them as part of your lineup to draw people in. So while I agree with what you're saying, Heather, and I understand, it also may cause the aspect of pulling a lot of these films out, which may open the door for other filmmakers who might want that experience, but it may pull away projects that are pulling the audience away, which may hurt the film festival.
As soon as a distributor picks up a film, they generally pull it from showing.
Well, I understand that.
Usually.
Yeah.
And the issue with Netflix is that they don't want to show things theatrically, and you literally kill yourself to try to see it theatrically. But that's, I think, based on their very strong brand model, which I disagree with.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say you see Netflix get booed at a lot of festivals.
Even at Cannes.
Yeah, exactly. They get booed all the time at Cannes because they've really taken this very kind of particular kind of screw you attitude towards the entire film festival world.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and kind of eschewed it entirely. I would add that I think it depends on the level of filmmaker as well. I mean, if you're talking about really, really small, low budget films, then I think the film festival circuit is incredibly important still, because there have been multiple platforms that have opened up for self-distribution, but they're only so effective when it comes to actually getting your film out into the hands of an audience on a large scale. And for really small budget films, like what happened with our film last year, it was thanks to the film festival circuit, because we just started a new production company. We didn't really have any credit under our belt as a new company. We'd all worked elsewhere, but hadn't really been able to establish ourselves, and we were really trying to do that with this film. It was the film festival circuit that got us recognition and got us distribution in the end of the day, and I think that's true. And for even smaller films, this may be the only time that they get to be seen by a wider audience. So in that case, I also would say that they're important. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're going to survive. That doesn't mean that business model isn't suffering. But I would see them as important to a certain aspect, a certain level of filmmakers still.
It's film festivals also are super important for filmmakers, and especially burgeoning filmmakers in the sort of press the flesh sense. My personal experience, and it just you see this happen so many times, where a lot of filmmakers will bring their first film or their first feature or a short film to a film festival, and will meet people at that festival, and apropos of whatever their offering is that year, that will allow them to make their next thing, and oftentimes that next thing will go back to the very same film festival. And I don't know how you replace that and that aspect of it if you completely sort of take these, or you try to kind of reconfabulate it into something where it's just a digital and everybody's watching at home and you sort of ape the experience in that way. Your next, obviously, which was mentioned, the first time I became aware of those filmmakers was at Fantastic Fest a year before, because they had their they being Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett, had their first feature, A Horrible Way to Die, which there were very numerous members of that were involved in You're Next. I was there with a different film, but it was the same producers that eventually made You're Next, and they became aware of those filmmakers because they saw A Horrible Way to Die at Fantastic Fest. I couldn't even get into A Horrible Way to Die that year at Fantastic Fest because it was a sensation and it was sold out. So it would certainly be a loss for everybody in that way too. Should film festivals go the way of the dodo bird, I think.
I agree with that, and I would also say that happens, or appears to happen, on multiple levels. I mean, it's not just the really tiny filmmakers that get that opportunity through networking at film festivals. I think that was the story with Anna Lily Amirpour, the woman who made Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I think it was through Fantastic Fest that she met Elijah Wood, and Elijah Wood was the one through his company was the one that actually made that happen, because she'd been trying to make that happen for like years before that, I think. And it was that environment that allowed that to happen. And I would also say, from personal experience, that's what happened here for us last year. We met a bunch of really great producers whose film was also in the festival with us, and we hooked up and we were looking at making new stuff together. And it was this venue that made that happen. So yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely.
And on that positive note, like with Netflix and Amazon, I mean, they're the major companies that are bringing in diverse content.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only one, like you'll see big production companies above them, so to speak, which I don't even know if that's true anymore. But they tend not to bring in diverse content, where this is, they are a supporter for different kinds of stories and diverse characters and stories that you don't normally hear. And that's a lot of film festivals.
Right.
Like most of films in film festivals are in that realm, right? So, I mean, I have a film on Amazon. So it's just kind of, I don't want to like down Netflix and Amazon. I mean, I know maybe their business models aren't the best, but in a sense, I've been given an opportunity through film festivals, through the exposure, to have a film on Amazon, So, and there's such a lack of diversity in the horror genre and in video games. It was another aspect that I was looking at my video game list and I was just like, wow, all of these are guys and white guys. And, no offense.
Yeah, I mean, but what you're trying to say, but it's true. It's like film fests are great for white guys.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
You can say that. And me being a woman in this industry or in this genre, and someone who's also diverse. I'm Latina, so that's, you don't see a lot of me, I guess. And these festivals, I've been around, and I could see that there isn't a lot of me as a filmmaker, but there is a lot of me as an audience.
And it was always said so much as that the folks that watch horror movies over all the time are Latino.
Yeah.
And Latina.
Yeah.
Like, as a huge, you keep
Isn't that
going
funny?
back and forth.
Yeah, it's true. But the film festivals kind of, in a sense, have given me personally that exposure.
It's interesting. One of the festivals I was just at, I'll leave it nameless for now. It was brought up that there was a lack of diversity, and we were sitting around a table, and it was just like here, everyone's white, and then you have one, two, whether black, Hispanic, whatever it is, and it's not meant to be any sort of disrespect, but it's interesting how they market the film festivals, and depending on where you are, you have a certain niche crowd that's going to be a part of it. You also have your inner circles that are going to be there. I can name 5 festivals and tell you probably the 10 or 15 people are going to be at each one always. And that's also a problem when it comes to film festivals, because it's great to see an amazing audience out here. I think I know maybe 3 of you out here. That's not usual. I know quite a lot that's in the audience. To see it's not the same wherever you go. And that's a scary, scary component to film festivals. And, why do I harp so much on film festivals? Because, as I brought up last week, there's no other place you're going to see a lot of these films unless you want to go on VOD. That was brought up already. VOD is the prevalent, and maybe VOD is better than going to the film festival. As filmmakers, you have your varied opinions on it, but film festivals are one of the last places to be able to see any sort of these films. to see something like a Flesh Blanket, to see a Scars of Xavier, to go ahead and see a lot of these different diverse films.
Well, TIFF just got rid of most of its horror programming when it got rid of that
It got rid of Vanguard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was where all the genre stuff was. So
Right.
now you only have the 13 slots for the midnight show.
Right, and that is a very coveted spot. Peter Kapowski does a great job taking over Colin Adams now.
Love them both.
Oh, they're amazing. I don't disagree with you. But that's, you have those certain spots, and those larger festivals might be able to get some of that programming as we round back to Netflix and Amazon. They might be able to get that, but then it becomes really kind of, I hope to God no, but a bidding war to be able to bring some of these in. And I know there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot more too with it, but the basic concept of it, Now, let's reverse that for a second. You want positive news. Filmmakers, people who are involved in projects, actors, producers, whatever, everyone on here. Is it better for the fact of you if those tent poles are pulled out and you guys get the slots? Because that's something we see here with Fear NYC. Most of these films we've seen at a variety of film festivals, but not brought together. This is one of the most diverse and unique lineups I've seen all year. So, does it work for you?
I think you need them because the type of film festival. Here you go. I am also I'm a journalist. I'm also a producer. I produce all these doc supplements, and I just produce a Glass Eye
By the way,
film
kick ass. I just want to say that.
called The Ranger. And when you make a film, you want to find film festivals that have a market attached to it, and people are going to buy the thing. So part of it that's going to draw different buyers. There are the tentpole films that are just because. We're talking about film festivals in general, but there's also genre. It's people will see a monster movie regardless of budget. So I feel within the genre movie, I don't care there was a Blumhouse Sony film with our films. I don't think it matters. It's the horror audience is there, but you have a diversity of different buyers when you have the temple people there.
I would agree with that. I would say you can't get rid of them because then it eliminates an avenue for filmmakers to progress if there isn't that market there.
But that also might not be the goal of all filmmakers. I don't think my goal is to ever go work for a studio system. So I think it's important for buying. But in film festivals like this, and I that don't have markets attached to it, this is a time just to sit and enjoy beautiful content with people that you love and a community around it. And I think they're super important. Puff is like that in Philadelphia. I was at my friend Madeline's Film Fest, and it was just this wonderful Philadelphia community, and it felt like home, and you could talk to everybody, and you're not trying to wheel and deal. There's no cliques or anything. It's just people love horror movies.
Yeah,
and
that is so nice to do, to turn yourself off from that for a little while and be able to actually enjoy this because of why we wanted to do it in the first place.
And I feel Fear NYC specifically, out of a lot of the festivals that we've been through, has that community and has that feeling. Because this was the only festival that I felt after the screenings and after anything that we did, we still hung out with people and we still got to know people, and became friends with people and are still connected. And I feel like a lot of the other festivals, it's not that.
Yeah, it's very, very rough, and I'll give a great example. It was recently at Brooklyn Horror Film Festival, and there was a lot going on with a lot of people. And there was one guy standing at a table, not talking for the moment, and I walked over and I had a chance to meet face-to-face with Nicholas Tucci, and I had him on the show before talking previous projects, and it was great to meet face-to-face. With festivals like that where there's so much going on, that's one of the great things about those festivals, the networking, the getting to know people. Andy Kohler out there in the audience, for Charismata, had a chance to meet him at Philadelphia Indian Film Festival, Puff, and had a chance to actually sit there and talk. It's a great experience to do it. Different ones have different vibes. Any further comment? No?
I was going to say Horrible Imagining Film Fest when it comes to diversity. Do you know that one?
Good.
My friend Miguel Rodriguez runs it,
Awesome.
and that is one of the most diverse film festivals I ever
Yes.
at. They have blocks for LGBT, and they have people all over the world, all colors, all stuff like that. It's because he does something that a lot of the other film fests don't do, and I mentioned this during the Great Disgrace that happened at Fantastic Fest, is that you need to do outreach into other people's communities. Because when you go to the film fest and no one looks like you, that means you're not welcome.
Right.
But Miguel does that, as does Stacy from Etheria. She does outreach in the female people who are female, and get them in there.
And I will add on to that with Miguel, because he was just recently on the show. He's tied into every aspect in the San Diego community with film. Every event you'll find him there. He's as open as you're going to find. So is Stacy. So is Heidi with the theory.
Yes.
They're amazingly open because they want to promote film, they want to promote filmmakers.
They're also
And
both people of color, which is good to know as well.
Absolutely. We'll move on from the film festival because it's amazing how fast time goes. And it's great debate. After we kick this one in, and in fact, does anyone have any questions? I don't want to forget you folks out there. Any questions on the film festival aspect? Go ahead.
Talking about the big companies coming in and tentpole movies and all that, from a very small budget movie standpoint, and I'm here with the director of Low Budget Nightmares, which you don't get much more low budget than that. We didn't bother with Sundance, we didn't bother with Slam Dance, we didn't bother with South by Southwest because that is where the people are spending the money to get in. A small festival like this is tailor-made. This is where you get your exposure. Those big festivals started out small. One day this is going to be as big as TIFF or Sundance or any place else, and we'll be going someplace else if it's still low budget. This isn't going to stop, and somebody's going to have the idea of doing this again, always.
Amen. To that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I've experienced, done a couple of shorts, and what I found really brilliant is that once my film's got into one short, I've actually been contacted by other festivals who've heard about it or seen it, and it's sort of managed to get more exposure than I thought it possibly could, because you get so much rejection of the festival. It's brutal. It's
Insanity.
Wow, it's making something and nobody cares, and then you have this little moments of joy when it sort of has a little snowball effect where one little success might lead to someone else picking up. And I got a call yesterday from another festival saying, "Oh, we've heard about your film, we'd love you to enter it," and that's been really positive. But to me, from the experience I have, I'm so interested. It's absolutely the only way I know how to get my film out there. So I've been asked to put things on Amazon through different people, but I just think this is going to be a drop in the ocean or something like that. And for me, I love cinema experience, especially horror. I think horror wins in cinema than most other genres of films. So to have that experience to play it on the screen in front of an actual group of people just watching it collectively, something I would never want to give up. That's great.
That's another conversation, a huge conversation that could run 2 days right there about what happens when the project goes into distribution, where it goes, where it lands, and who's going to ever see it. We don't know. Nonetheless, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's not a question, it's more of a quick comment. Something that I've always appreciated about horror, ever since I first went to my first horror con, was how it's inclusive, but it's inclusive because people can recognize you're part of it. And as far as the diversity in film and horror movies that have been happening recently, what's dominated this year, everything that I've seen with all horror people, has been XX, Raw, and The Bad Batch. So you have Anna Lilia Manvor and Ivanka Vukovic and Julia Dockernow, and that's been all women. That's what everybody's been going crazy over.
And also Get Out.
Mm-hmm.
Get Out too was big, but those, at least where I was at, those Get Out came out and was big, and then those three was just a triple hit, and until it came out, and then Mother, and now we have the what's happening later in the year, those were the big things that swept it. So I think that it's interesting that in the horror community and with horror people, they recognize what's good. It doesn't matter who's behind the camera, it's a matter of whether they respond to the material or not. And that's something that I've always thought was really good about horror, was the fact that it's more about can you deliver or can you not. So,
but you know what, this is where I throw an audible in the program, because I think that's a great segue to talk about the aspect. And we'll get to the Masters of Horror and all that stuff. Everyone's heard about the Masters of Horror, but I think the aspect of women in programming and diversity in programming is something that's exceptionally relevant over the past year, especially. And it goes back longer than that. But I talked to Ivanka. I had her on the program, and we talked about XX. And I talked with Todd Brown, the XX. My question was this for her. It is a wonderful idea. Tremendous to have this anthology brought together. It puts the spotlight on women filmmakers. Is it just a gimmick? Or is it the aspect of something that might open doors for incredible women filmmaker in the room?
I think you can watch sort of like the ABCs of Death, and it would be mostly all white males that made it, and no one would say that was a gimmick.
But I say the reason why I bring up the gimmick is because I'm hoping it's a door that opens. I'm not so sure it is. And I want to hear from the producers, filmmakers.
The actual
Yeah.
structure of making a film is stacked against certain people who are female and people of color, and that comes down to the idea of, because what do people feel a director looks like? It's a white male. So when you're trying to get funding, it's like, I went through this entire process. It's like there's a lot of sexism and a lot of things with different aspects to get a film made. So the problem is access to money, access to crew to get out there as a first-time filmmakers. It's why a lot of women just will make short films forever, and there's no one that brings them over to let's make a feature film. It's at every aspect of trying to get it done.
That's so hard. I'm so sorry.
No,
sorry.
you go ahead.
It just we had just been through this in a sense that I was producing a feature horror genre film, and we were trying to get a lot of these female directors on board, a ton.
Right.
Like we had called, I think 40 of them over a course of a few months of researching who would be right for this, and the women from the XX was in the list, and we had called Roxanne Benjamin and
Right.
just a whole slew of them. And what we found was a lot of them were working on their own projects and couldn't commit to anyone else's at the time.
Makes sense.
Because no one else was giving them that opportunity in the scale that they're capable of doing it. And so they were like, F it, I'm gonna make my own stuff, which is what happens to me a lot of times, which happens to them. And it was really hard to find a female director only because of that. Because they were creating their own work because they had no other way of getting their stuff out there. And I hope that from the XX they've gotten some amazing exposure and have gotten some hits, but it's still this thing of we have these female directors who are as qualified as the male directors.
Totally agree.
And the male directors will go from a short to a $3 million movie.
Yeah.
And then there's a female directors that go from a short to maybe
Another short.
another short, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a huge problem. And I think the only way to fix it is the exposure, is creating more work, is continuing on with that. But I can see why you think it's a gimmick, because because it's a hot thing right now.
Right.
But I also don't.
Diversity should be a hot thing.
Yeah, to bring it all together
That
should
and
be a hot thing.
consent should be the most sexiest thing Hollywood could ever
Right.
do.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, any exposure at all, and it should be embraced. It should absolutely be embraced.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
think about it. People in the room, think of the first 5 directors that come to your mind, and then think of how many of those are women or people of color.
Right.
How many people of color that direct films can you name?
How many? I asked Mike Ingle this. It's out of all the run of Fangoria, how many women filmmakers have been on the cover of their movie? And I think it was Marion Lambert twice
Wow.
out of the
Yeah.
entire
No
run of
Catherine
Fangoria. No.
No. No. Hey, you know what? That poses a different question, Adrienne. Is the XX hurting the female director then? Because if both of you are talking about short films going from one to the next, it sounds kind of like it's just spinning your wheels, like it's getting you nowheres. So is XX a good idea then, to be able to have an anthology that focuses on female filmmakers, if it's just from one short to the next? I mean, is it? Is it not?
I feel like there should be an anthology that focuses on diverse filmmakers. So it's
don't disagree.
women, people of color, and when I mean people of color, I mean people of color, not just
Right.
Black or Latin. I'm not saying Indian
Right.
or Asian, or it's
absolutely.
just there needs to be. I love that they did that, and I would have loved to be a part of that in some capacity.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. That's why I bring it up.
But I do feel like that's still needed, because it's still such a male-dominated industry.
Because like gives to like.
Yeah.
And there's no
Exactly.
one out there to say oh, what about my
And it's so insidious. I think that in a lot of the film industry, there's this level of sometimes misogyny, but definitely sexism that is almost not even thought of among it's not like there are certainly people out there that I think are actively misogynist.
like
But
Harvey
I-
Weinstein?
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Let's all address the elephant in the room.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yes, but I also think that there's a lot of, because it's been there since almost the beginning of the film industry, and it's so all-encompassing that I think a lot of times it needs these things. It needs these moments of celebrating these things just to like remember there are people that are women that should be working, because I think a lot of times that there's just a level of sexism that's built in that is almost unconscious, that people don't
And in
think of
2017, we have to say that we have to go, look, women direct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How sad is that?
It's so sad.
Not even filmmakers or directors, even the actors on because I didn't get to see the XX. I've seen like snippets of it, but I vaguely remember. Is there any lead actors that are of color in any of their things?
So now I think one of the requirements was that was a female lead, but
Right.
no one of color. Yes.
And there's no reason why there couldn't be. There's nothing in the scripts that say this person has to be white.
However,
right?
though,
Open cast.
and my apologies for not remembering her name, but the aspect of the animated buffers in between is of Hispanic heritage. As far as I don't remember what her name is, my apologies. But that's the only aspect as any connection. Now, keep in mind, XX took years to get made. I remember Texas Frightmare 3 years ago. It was Rebecca McKendry, it was Jen Lynch, it was Yabanka, and they were saying the Saskas were going to be a part of it, and Karen Kusama was going to be a part of it. It didn't work out that way because things fell apart, as you had brought up. Different projects, you go in different directions over the time, you know. But I think that's one thing that's very interesting about the acting aspect of it, because, you know, there's a lot of great roles that are coming up for amazing female protagonists and antagonists. You know, you've seen here at the film festival, very diverse stuff, but there's a huge problem with diversity as well as the aspect of female.
Well, Most Beautiful Island is written and directed by a Latina woman. I think it took 10 years for her to get made until she talked to Larry Telluride, and it went to win like the South by Southwest Grand Jury Award, but no one wanted to give a first-time Latina woman a chance who wrote a script, and the person who did, well, now like Orion has put out the film because she wouldn't give her a chance. But Glass Eye is different when it comes to sort of diversity and
Huge.
yeah.
Huge. I agree with that.
that's Larry's heart is there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. It seems like it's so daunting, no matter who you are, to get to the upper echelon. And you start looking at demographics of, yes, it's dominated by white males. So statistically, it would seem that more white males would get more opportunities in the upper echelon because there are more white male filmmakers and less diversity. And I've worked in the studio system for a long time. I'm out now. But, I worked in post on The Walking Dead and so forth. And it's very diverse. I mean, everyone who works on big motion pictures and television, the whole team, it takes a village, is as diverse as it gets. And we have female showrunners, and a lot of the power within the Hollywood structure is shifting towards females.
Well, they say specifically in television that there's an incredible move for female directors.
Right.
There is in
amazing.
TV,
It's
for
awesome.
sure. Yeah.
And you're seeing like that shift is happening. So I think what you're talking about that is happening. I think that we're still all struggling as we're here right now, and you look at the numbers, and it's hard for anybody. It's like you have to have that one piece of genius that breaks through, like, and it doesn't matter who you are, and it happens. A lot of it, yes, it's connections, who you're connected to, and stuff like that. But it's now everyone's making movies. I graduated film school in '98, and I was still on film, right? So like the digital revolution hadn't begun yet, right? And everything's changed now. I was cutting on a steam back and stuff. So, here I am, 40 years old. I'm a partner in a media company, and we do VFX on movies and stuff like that. But I'm still trying to, be what I want to be. I want to direct and stuff. It's a struggle. I got to take care of my family. Everyone's got these struggles, but I think things are happening. Positive things are happening towards that. And so whatever we can do by diversifying film festivals and all that stuff can help. But things are much better than they used to be when from 15, 20 years ago when I started.
Although I think that also brings up... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That also brings up an interesting point, because we were talking about television, the fact that television has created a level of diversity that the movie industry is maybe lagging behind a little bit. You're also seeing a migration from the movie industry to the television industry from a lot of filmmakers as well, and that brings up the point, well, what's going on with film? Like, is this... Are they not is the film industry not catching up fast enough to I'm not saying not survive. I think there's always going to be movies, but is it isolating itself in a way that's going to be damaging to the film industry?
Yeah. It's interesting how with Get Out, as well as XX, within basically the same calendar year, you see people take them almost as shock treatments. There's a black person directing and writing a film. There's a bunch of women getting together to create an anthology. I think when you look at that kind of aspect, it really kind of puts things in perspective on where the film industry is. And you know what? Perhaps it's the first shots over the bow that's going to make change. Perhaps. But we don't know that. And, again, I will tie back to film festivals. Film festivals offer that screen, offer that platform for filmmakers from around the world. We have how many different countries in the audience right now that have come here to New York City, one of the most, if not the most diverse cities in the entire world. So there is hope out there, and it depends on your perspective.
You could also say that the audience wants diversity and wants to see themselves represented on screen, and it is the people who make it that go, it's just for us.
Yeah.
That's another conversation altogether on where those projects come from, though. I agree with you, though. Anyone else want to add anything to it? Anyone out in the crowd? Going once, going twice. Sold. All right, we move forward, folks. Let's talk Masters of Horror. Tyler. I agree. When we deal with Masters of Horror, one thing I think all of us in the last few years have noticed is that they're going away. I think that's a nice way of putting for what we've seen. Wes Craven, Tobe Hooper, the aspect of George A. Romero, who you'll see Night of the Living Dead later on tonight. It's kind of scary to think how fast these legends are now going out. One of the specialties in the title of this was Masters of Horror. For the panel up here, as well as the fans, filmmakers, anyone who's influenced by these masters, what does it mean to you to know that we're losing them as quick as we are?
I'm very grateful I got to meet them and talk to them.
As a group.
When My Soul to Take was out, I got to meet and interview Wes Craven and talk to him about why genre was important to him, Romero on many occasions, and Tobe Hooper. I was trying to make a doc on the making of Chainsaw 2, so I chased down a lot of his life and hung out with him many times. I have the set photography from Chainsaw 2, all the
you
negatives.
Have the 35mm reel.
I have the 35mm reel in Chainsaw 2, and I have all the black and white photography of on-set photography of that entire film. I mean, I had to talk for all of them. I was so upset when Wes Craven died. I heard about that when I was on Struck at Heads, but when Toby died, because Chainsaw is such an important film to me, like I was doing pickups for a movie I was working on, and I wanted to make sure that everybody left, and I cried. It's like, oh, Jen has to leave, everyone has to leave, and I was so sad. And I was sad because because they're so important, I thought of a world where Chainsaw didn't exist, and I said that at the Alamo in Yonkers. It's like Chainsaw transformed modern horror filmmaking, and the idea that we were so grateful that Tobe Hooper existed, in regards to like the craziness of the rest of his career, like he made that film, he transformed cinema, and the idea of these guys were never around, what they did for the genre that was so important.
Yeah, all those guys.
They're all transformative.
Yeah, all of them were absolute pioneers. That they created modern horror, basically, all of them. And a lot of people are still using what they made and maybe improving on it, absolutely. But if it weren't for them, that most of what we consider to be the horror genre wouldn't exist, in my opinion.
I'm going to add this quick story, and this has to do with Wes Craven. Within the same boundaries, within a 30-minute walk, is the New York City Horror Film Festival. When Wes Craven was alive, he came out and he was honored with a Lifetime Achievement. And Wes Craven, for the time he was there, which was a couple hours, met every single person, took every single photo, shook every single hand, sat for an hour, talked with the entire crowd. I take pride in speaking with legends as well as the filmmakers of tomorrow, the artists of tomorrow. But he was one on my bucket list that I missed. And the only thing I got to say to him was, I thank you for your work. I shook his hand, and then the whole crowd swarmed him like the living dead. There was no time to do it because of what the impact he was. On that same bill was Rob Zombie. He was there also the next night. Egotistical, the biggest jackwagon you're going to meet, as he stood there and acted like the king. And I think one of the things, the reason why I say the story is, one of the things that means so much with that generation of Tobe Hooper, of George A. Romero, because I sat there with George A. Romero at the CT Horror Fest for 9 hours. The guy went to the bathroom once. He met every single fan. He sat there. He was amazing. And he was obviously very ill at the time. This was last year. And you know the rest of the story. But they weren't celebrities. They were filmmakers like everyone else in this room, trying to get their vision out, affected by events in their life, religion, politics, war. And that's kind of lost on this generation. No disrespect to filmmakers out there, but many of the mainstream, it's kind of lost because it's celebrity. Who's at the top of the bill? The director's name, not the cast. Back then, for most films, it was just the title of the film. Later on, it was established as it. And you know what, Nick, I want to ask you, because Adam Wingard, you can't find a more quiet guy, at least that I've seen. I mean, he really kind of stayed out of the spotlight for a long time. It took him forever to get a lot of his film work done. You know, he's one of the few why he's got a lot of mainstream success now. It took a long time, and he was very quiet in the background. Lucky McKee's the same exact way. How many have seen May in this room? Lucky McKee's film. Brilliant. I believe, has he moved out to LA or is he still in Oklahoma? You know, there's a lot of filmmakers who basically stay at the spotlight, but you can't say that. Definitely you can't say that for the masters of horror who were not celebrities back then. Impact of losing someone like a Tobe Hooper, and Heather, thank you for the sharing on it, the personal experience, because I know how emotional it is with someone like Hooper who impacted so much, and it's very upsetting. But also George A. Romero, you know, Night of the Living Dead, arguably might be the greatest independent film of all time, you know. Who's affected by it? Who else?
I mean, I'm a fan of his stuff, and he, I mean, he was doing something that it wasn't really a thing at that time period,
right,
where horror films were just based on just one scary thing, whether it was a monster or a person, and then he brought in a group of scary things into a film.
He brought in us.
Yeah, exactly. The human condition. But yeah, I mean, and that was something so different at the time, bringing in, you know, zombies and a mass of them. But
the casting of Dwayne Jones.
I was going to say,
and I was going to say the casting, where it was supposed to be originally a white male, and then he cast, you know, a black actor, and that's another, you know, change of events that he started.
And open, of course, because he's Cuban.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Well, that I didn't know.
No, he's a person of color.
Yeah.
He talks about growing up sort of like in the sort of Pittsburgh, which is very blue collar, and he
had very blue collar.
He had like a lot of racial epithets screamed at him like growing up because of his last name and his heritage.
Yes, yeah.
So I always thought that's why he was open to cast.
Well, and Toby was inspired by him, by Dawn of the Dead. You know, at least that's what I've read in the past. You know, and because there wasn't anyone doing that kind of horror film.
There's also a prestigious aspect to it. Because, I mean, who has a Night of the Living Dead? MoMA does.
Yeah.
And I believe they also have Chainsaw as well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I love the story of how he came up with Chainsaw. Because I don't know if anyone, like, knows, and maybe you do, obviously you would.
I want to hear your story.
Well, what I heard was he was Christmas shopping, and he was in a store, like where there was like a massive group of people, and he saw a chainsaw in front of him. Was like, if I just grab this chainsaw and started swinging it around, people would just scatter out of my way. And I was just like, I heard that, and I was like, that makes sense.
Also, that film came from a political place as well, because he's from Austin, which is the more liberal aspect of an entire conservative sea over in Texas.
Yeah.
You know, I'll even add one more wrinkle to it, and then Nicholas will jump over to you. Gunnar Hansen, I would say Gunnar. Gunnar Hansen, how did he come up with Leatherface? He went to a mental institution, walked around. He was a big guy, spent 2 days there, and learned how to be different, learned how to be special, learned how to be, and we won't use the R word for this, but it impacted the way that he saw that character of Leatherface. And when the guards walked by him, they looked at him, they kept walking because he was convincing enough. Think about that.
I was just going to say that I think it'll be interesting to see, and it may take quite a long time, but who emerges as those kind of the new masters, if you will, the nouveau masters. And also, you know, you talk about the impact that a movie like Chainsaw has, and I kind of think of, you know, the movie, for me, that was kind of the biggest leap forward in the last 15, whatever it was, years. would be 28 Days Later, let's say, right?
Great film, Danny
And
Boyle.
now you can't say that Danny Boyle is a horror filmmaker, right? But and so how much of that owes to him? How much of it owes to Alex Garland, the screenwriter, and so forth? And so whether the fact that as a filmmaker your oeuvre will be dotted with enough of those kinds of efforts that you can be considered a horror master per se, when all kinds of filmmakers can kind of make contributions and evolutionary perhaps contributions to the genre. I mean, I do think it's important that you do have people that stay within, you know, not like for their own purposes, but I think it is important for the genre to have those kind of filmmakers that those are the kind of films they're interested in making, and those are the kind of themes that they're interested in looking at, and you know, it's a personal. So much of it, I think, owes horror, especially, is one of those genres where so much of it owes to influence of those who have come before, and you're always seeing this happen. You're always seeing this snowball and continuing to rotate. Next Thursday, I got to go up to Syracuse because I'm doing a short film where the last like 4 minutes of it are me having a two-way conversation with a live goat. So, you know, like Robert Eggers obviously has already influenced the 20, 21-year-old
I think the
kid
guy
that's
who's really influential is actually David Fincher on the genre, because like Seven did not influence things right away, but it has influenced what horror looks like forever. He's probably like, if you want to, and he's not like that. He's like not a horror filmmaker, but he's interested in that dark matter. And it just, every film that I see, it's like it's influenced how he shot it, the color timing of it, why things are green. Saw looks a certain way. It's just, I think he would be.
To be fair, I mean, Andrew Kevin, you know, the way and the turn, the twist, and everything. You can see that. You know, tastes of that in so many things.
Real quick before we get to the crowd,
actually, I would actually add to that and say that is kind of starting to be true across the board for a lot of directors. I mean, take a look at a lot of the kind of more independent art house kind of horror that's been coming out, like Robert Eggers. I think he's doing a horror film next. I think he's he's doing Nosferatu
with Doug Jones.
Yeah, but a lot of
get any more, you know, full circle.
But a lot of the other ones aren't. You know, Jim Mickle made the 2013 remake of We Are What We Are, which was really good. But he's not doing horror anymore.
No, he did. He went off and did the Sundance show.
Yeah, and same thing with Robert Mitchell, the guy that did. It Follows.
It Follows. Yes.
His first film wasn't horror, and I don't know if he's going to make another horror.
Well, if I may add on real quick, that's one thing that there was no classification with the Masters. They weren't called the Masters of Horror coming out. It wasn't like a fraternity, the Masters of Horror. Here they are. They were just filmmakers. You want anything to it? Go for it.
I think that, you know, I think we're in a period of time where I think it's beneficial that we don't have like a set master of horror, because we get all of these diverse viewpoints on what the horror genre means to filmmakers, to the audiences. I think that's really beneficial right now. Will we get another master of horror? Probably. But like we said, who knows when it's going to happen. But I think right now we're in a really, really cool sort of era of horror films, right? Because we don't have a set, like, this is the guy that makes horror films. This is like...
I think they were the guys that made horror films because they were pigeonholed to make horror films.
Yeah.
And there might be more flexibility for Fincher to move in and out of making films that make a lot of money. But I know they all wanted to make something that was not horror films. Romero tried to at Season of the Witch. They changed that name, Season of the Witch, to be more like a horror film so people would see.
Yeah, you know, like people ask, "What's your favorite Wes Craven film?" And I say, "Music of My Heart." Music of My Heart is the only film that he actually got an opportunity and had to jump through hoops to be able to get that made, and it's a beautiful film. And he worked with some of the most prestigious talent you can work. And I love the film, and I'm not afraid to say I loved it in second.
Mine is Last House on the Left, I think.
What's that?
Mine is Last House on the Left.
Well, yes. You know. And that, again, that shows the diversity. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. I want to take, because I want to see who's the next level. Because, Nick, you brought up the bridge for our next topic. But, Crowley, who wants to? Go ahead.
I was, you know what, they just hit upon what I was going to say.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, I think horror for a lot of filmmakers, there's less rules. And all the greats got their start in horror, from Francis Ford Coppola, Dementia 13, you know, Oliver Stone, The Hand. Like, it's a way for great filmmakers to showcase their style and their storytelling. And so, yeah, Wes complained about, you know, I got pigeonholed a little bit in horror. And I think a lot of people in the room would be happy to be pigeonholed in horror, you know? But I think we're all storytellers when it comes down to it, and some of us are bent towards the dark like Fincher. But I think you said it very well when you're saying, that it's really, staying within the genre. It might be rare as we see some of the great filmmakers because they're compelled to tell stories.
You know who's inside horror that I did an interview is Dario Argento. Dario Argento just wants to make horror films.
Yeah, I love it. There's some that just embrace it.
Yes.
There are people that do, yeah, absolutely.
Let's go. That is the way that I express my art. It's just through darkness and genre.
I will say this: horror films come up with the best lines, and for 7, what's in the box? So, anyone else from the crowd? Yes, good.
You also have some of the more backup. I mean, if you had the Mount Rushmore of horror masters, you have Carpenter, Romero, Craven, and Hooper. Then you have your backups of Bob Clark, who I think is extremely influential. If it wasn't for Black Christmas, Halloween doesn't happen.
Right.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it does happen, but it was also influential on him, and he's somebody that influenced a whole bunch of people we now call masters of horror. But the thing he's best known for is A Christmas Story, and he got pigeonholed in horror for years before he was able to move on. But I think that it's important to look at not just the people that we consider masters of horror, but the people that sort of back them up and influence them. Because I think the problem that we're having now is I think about a lot after Blair Witch Project, Scream, Bride of Chucky, and Freddy vs. Jason. A lot of people have been running scared in the horror community because those changed everything. Wes Craven came out and said, I know everything that I'm doing and have been the whole time. He brought the self-awareness to the genre around, and since then people have been like, well, I can't say anything snarky about slashers because Wes Craven knew what I was doing. So people have been trying to go back and be like, all right, how do I rebuild slashers? You don't. People have been trying to go back and do remakes and say, this is my reimagining of this, and nobody's really tried to do the research and the legwork in order to come up with something new. If you look at what Craven did and what he was inspired by, for even Nightmare or something like that, there's an originality to it, there's backwork, there's legwork, there's creative thought that's going into it. But since Blair Witch and Scream, everybody's been like, well, I'm not going to give those credit. People were angry that they were had with Blair Witch, but we have Paranormal Activity.
Right. Well, the full found footage.
And it's like, if you claim that you don't like that movie, but how many found footage movies have come out since then? It's the reverse of what happened with Romero and all those masters. And I think that there needs to be some sort of breakout where people I think a lot of people are trying to hold on to a car that's out of control, and they really need to grab a hold of something and say, we've done this, we've been here before, we need to go back and try to do something different. Because everybody's doing the same thing and saying, I'm doing something totally different, but it's like, what about this movie, this movie, this movie, this movie?
Well, there's always been trends in film and any sort of art, and I was going to go back to there's been a lot of articles about slasher films coming back, and I was watching one recently. I was actually watching The Prowler, and the way that movie is put together, the kills, the shots, the crafts. I mean, any filmmaker could just watch that, but that's talking about the grammar of filmmaking and how they're composing things and how tension is created.
If I may throw in, and this is a film that's currently on the festival, it's about to finish out the festival run, My Friend Dahmer.
I love that film.
Incredible. Mark
I did a
Myers
Q&A for that.
tapped in, and you want to know how you reinvent something where you get a different feel? I think Sean Connery said best in The Untouchables, you don't go to the barrel, you go to the tree. And with Mark Myers, he went to the graphic novel. I don't know the artist's name off the top of my head, it's very weird. But thank you, thank you, I appreciate that. He grew up with Jeffrey Dahmer. And I know Skarsgård Xavier plays into the aspect. There is influence of what the serial killer is. When you go all the way back and see him as a child, an awkward teenager, becoming who he is, that's how you reignite the slasher genre. You go back to the origins of these madmen who influence.
Also, I'm Not a Serial Killer was amazing.
That is a great Christopher Lloyd, yes,
That's
exactly.
and Christopher Lloyd. A lot of folks that didn't see that one, it was very much a sleeper.
Yes.
I meet people in the world that need to see that movie that haven't seen that movie.
Very dark, very grim, and Christopher Lloyd is terrifying.
And I think it's like and that kid is like, Max Record is like every horror fan I know. You all see yourself in it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just maybe also an aspect to this is it harkens back obviously to the idea and the need for diversity, and particularly people who are the visionaries behind these projects. Is maybe one of the ideas too is that you take something that's very conventional in the way that it fits in the genre, let's say like a Final Girl type movie. And I think of so many of the things that I've done, like, have really been a female lead Final Girl sort of centric movie. Usually ends up beating me to death in the movie.
Puts a blender on your head, just saying.
Exactly right. So let's say you take that movie and a filmmaker of color does that movie, or a female filmmaker, for example, does that same kind of movie, and now you have a new perspective on the oldest hat in the horror closet, as it were. So you don't necessarily have to always reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's just the personality politics of who's behind it that can breathe a new life into
an old idea.
I'd have to say Luchagor Productions up in Vancouver is doing some amazing stuff, taking the Mexican heritage, reinventing it with modern day horror tropes, and really incredible stuff what they're doing out there. And that right there, and again I'm going to go Scars of Xavier again, because you're looking at Scars of Xavier, and those who were here last night, it's a handsome man who can blend in society and can be a predator without you even knowing that he's sitting right behind you, and actually he is sitting right behind you. But the point being is, the question of dealing with minorities, the question of dealing with women and getting their influence into the slasher genre, it's real simple. You go ahead and you bring in people that you don't expect to be, and that's how you jump that problem. That's how you're able to do it, because Scars of Xavier does that really, really well.
Final Girls should come in every color, and they don't.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Any other ones from the crowd out there?
I just like that concept. Like, why hasn't there been like 3 great filmmakers, different perspective of diversity, do the same fucking screenplay?
I think everyone should keep remaking Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first film.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what they should do. They just give it to everybody.
Just
Every
different
year,
perspectives.
every year someone does it.
That
My
sounds
dream
like a
is to always
great
have
idea.
Martin Scorsese to do it one year.
Cool idea.
But
You have the Texas Chainsaw Film Festival soon.
just keep making it. Yes.
One other thing that's not brought up in just 1 second, body image. Flesh Blanket does that really well for someone who breaks down in front of you with a lot of factors that everyone can understand. And it's not only the aspect of gender or diversity, it's also an aspect of body image. Body image is a huge thing, because yes, there are films where they have the good-looking man or woman, but sometimes it's not as compelling as the person who's everyone else up here on the stage, who's hurting on the inside and is close to making that list or close to doing these terrible things. It's very interesting how we only focus on the aspect of gender and diversity when it's body image, when it's the aspect of stories that are taboo.
Well, also ableism.
Go ahead.
It's important. You can hire a lot of. You want to see a lot of disabled people out there.
Special needs.
You can have
Believe me,
them work
I
on-
work in the field when I'm not doing this, and I understand that.
Yeah,
greatly.
they can work in a crew. They make
Yes.
films. There was this film recently about a woman who had a chronic fatigue syndrome, and she directed the entire doc from her bed, and it worked. And it did a big film fest thing. My friend Sean saw it and told me about it. It's like, that's great. So I think we also, when we're thinking about people of color, that's what we have to think about everything, everyone.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We have to stop looking in the mirror and thinking about ourselves as like, what about all those people? And I think what helps folks pick other people is that in your daily life, like I've had people in my family, like my grandfather was in a wheelchair, all my friends are different backgrounds because of the New York City punk scene, and because of that, I remember it's like my friend group looks like this, and when I'm on a set, does my friend group look like this? Are these the people in my life? So I think it might start at a very like socialization stage.
Go ahead.
I'm 60 years old, so I'm a different generation than a lot of people here. So I was 45 years old when I made my first motion picture. Wrote, produced, directed, but most of the people on the set were women. Executive producer, my wife, production manager, and the type of film I was making was a revenge film. And one of the things that, since I grew up in a generation where I actually saw those films on the drive-in. I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So freaking lucky, dude.
I saw every single one of those in a drive-in, and that's what was my influence. Seeing revenge films. And nowadays I write. That's all I do, because getting funny. I'm 60 years old, and they want a young guy. You talk about ageism. the first thing I said is, well, I got to write for people and hand them scripts. So ageism is there, and that's part of the problem with John Landis not being able to get an A-list movie.
George A. Romero.
George A. Romero couldn't get it, and it's ageism is what it was. And you can throw your name on top of something.
Except for George Miller being the outlier, of course.
Well, George Miller's a lucky man
He's always
because he chooses not to work until he wants to work, and he does the one thing he loves to do. And but that's pretty much my statement. I'm lucky enough to have seen that type of work, and seeing House on Haunted Hill when I was 4 years old on Channel 5 here in New York, and freaking out. And then waiting for it to come back on and freak out again. And now I watch it and it's I laugh. I go, this is the silliest stupid thing I've ever seen. They even make fun of it on Riff Track, so it was a good track. But
cool. Yeah, go ahead. Go on.
I'm sorry, I think I was a little late to this panel, but
well, welcome.
Thank you. I was just curious because you were talking about different. Just the, I guess the different changes in the horror genre, and I sort of feel like I'm sort of a latecomer to the genre, but I really did enjoy seeing The Witch. I remember seeing the trailers for that, but I know it's such a divisive film, and I don't know, for many horror fans and for many people, it's just very mixed reaction. I didn't know why that was. I mean, is it
It's
just
the expectation of horror. I mean, a lot of the elevated genre stuff, to be quite frank, is like, I'm going to make a very arty film and I'm going to remove what would be considered to be traditional genre elements to it. And for people like me who are looking for transgressive imagery and just cathartic experience and strange characters and outsider characters, it seems to be that the trend is to remove all of that. And I think that's a lot of folks who saw The Witch, who were my friends or people in the community, going like, where's all the traditional elements of horror films? And I would say, to me, it's like the true term of elevated genre. It's like watch Greenaway's The Cook, the Wife, the Thief, and Her Lover, all the French Extremity stuff like Raw, which is gorgeous, but they keep the promise of what a genre means traditionally to the genre fan. And I think that is where the disconnect comes from. Also, I think in your soul that you feel it's like, well, this is a tasteful horror film, a film that I could bring home to my mother, I could bring someone on a date. You know, it's not like Cannibal Holocaust where you're slumming and it's extreme. But I take my dates to Cannibal Holocaust. I mean, I watched The Witch and it's beautifully made, and I went, he can craft such gorgeous images. Why isn't he showing us these images? That's why I'm sitting there and watching it. And you can still be high art and show that stuff. It's like Hixson is a high art film, and it shows a lot of witchery. I know he has it in them. I don't think people should know, but I think it's just being afraid of being pigeonholed.
Yeah.
And also maybe the idea of trying to make it like quote unquote like respectable. Do you know what I mean?
Horror fans don't like that. Horror fans are a lot of blue, or a lot of blue collar.
Yeah.
A lot of blue collar.
No, I was just gonna say, I just felt like it was marketed wrong. Mm-hmm. Because it was marketed to be what you're explaining, but when I saw it, I was like, well, this is a drama.
Mm-hmm. I saw
and for me, it was a drama, and I liked it as a drama. I didn't look at it as a horror film.
I saw it before its marketing. I saw it at Fantastic Fest, and then I saw it when it was marketed. So I watched it twice, and it's like, no, it's not enough in there for what I need when I watch film.
Nick.
But it's gorgeous.
I was just going to add to that, It Comes at Night, which to me was is my favorite horror movie of this year, and obviously it's the same distributor as The Witch, and certainly could be argued that if in fact you want to say it suffered, I mean, it didn't dampen my enthusiasm for either of those movies. My joke about The Witch and It Comes at Night was that I grew up in Connecticut in the woods, spent a lot of time in the woods, and have a predilection for devilry and whatever, and the whole deal. And at the end of The Witch, there's a goat who's Satan incarnate or whatever, and so it had all those things going that suited my particular interest. And I still liked It Comes at Night better. I really, that movie really, really affected me, and it really rubbed people the wrong way. I mean, I literally remember walking out of that theater and people were being like, "What the fuck?" You know, and whatever, because you didn't see the, the spore or whatever that was causing this contagion and things like that. I mean, I think there's lots of seats at the table. Certainly, people's personal preferences will come to bear on stuff, but it doesn't mean that there isn't room for that kind of stuff. And to make a really good movie and something that still can be considered part of the genre.
I go to horror to see or to be devastated or to make it feel like it's Halloween again, like with fun rubber monster movies like Ghoulies 2.
Hey.
It's not that. It's like I can't watch people that look like, because they're just. I consider it like to be like a lot of the stuff to be like Whole Foods horror. It's that kind of person.
Heather,
maybe it's a ghost.
Yes. It's interesting you bring that up because, real quick, before we jump to the next and probably the last one, because time's almost up already. Under the Shadow, incredible film. Thank you. I'm glad someone saw it. Incredible film dealing with a lot of issues, both gender-wise, politics, history. I thought outwitched the witch because it has such an atmosphere to it. And I'm not going to get too much into it because of time, but if you get a chance, check it out. The atmosphere it creates is incredible, and it had the greatest jump scare moment I've seen in a theater ever. It was incredible. With that being said, one of the things that was brought up a lot by you, Heather, was the aspect of not only remaking a film over and over with different perspectives, but also the aspect of, how the film looks and what our expectations are. Stephen King's It, I guess you could say the remake of it, whatever, the adaptation of it, came out. It blew away the box office. It helps that Stranger Things is out there. It helps that a lot of the cycle of this kind of horror that's going through. The clown is much scarier to some people. Some people, Tim Curry is scarier because of the personality he brings. Everyone's different, and that's awesome. But the success of it and that adaptation, does that open up the gates to films? Because for me, there's a lot kept in the book that's not shown on the screen. Orgy scene. Just throwing that out there for everyone out there, but it's very much, to some people, a whitewash. It's just a simple story with a very scary clown. I gotta be honest, it didn't really connect with me at all. I thought Tim Curry's character was much scarier because he had personality. He wasn't trying to rip your face off. He was like someone that you would meet at a party and go,
well, it had the unfortunate CGI over the actor's eyes, which I couldn't connect with because it's handsomely made film. It's beautiful. Right. It feels like a Stephen King film, but every single scare was flat because all those scares in the books, it's like this is a weird thing that the character is scared by. But I think every time it says if I show you a disturbing image, you're going to be disturbed. And I think because they didn't build the tension and context around what really scared them, why it didn't work. Because I kept seeing over and over and over again, it's like, it's not scary. But horror fans know better. They watch stuff that they're not scared of all the time. Right. But I think it's just that there's this certain emotional crescendo that you're going through when you're watching genre films. And like when you're just ready to feel it, and you get nothing, and that happens over and over again in the film. Yeah. And I think it's his performance. It was a shame they did that to his eyes. I mean, I'm not afraid of any clowns. I've worked on a clown movie, but they're not frightening.
I think with Tim Curry being scarier because it was more real. Mm-hmm. Like you knew this whole CGI world was on top of the most current It, and there was moments where it was kind of like disturbing, but I feel like in the book it's more the character of It is supposed to be kind of a manifestation of what kids are afraid of, right. And the current It wasn't so much that. It was so.
It was that monster.
It was just a monster, right? Exactly.
And he didn't really torment the kids. Like I was trying to get, it's like, what is his motivation? What is he trying to do?
Torment the kids? You're right. And I felt that with Tim Curry, he was tormenting.
But you also understood it.
And he was kind of a bully tormenting. It was something that the kids as grown-ups could relate to. I did like the fact that it was the kid's story.
Yeah.
I am a fan of Stranger Things, or Goonies, or any of those films that have like kids running the show. But yeah, I mean, I'm also a big fan of practical effects, and I missed that with I appreciate CGI, but when it's overly done, I felt like it was just too much of it.
I would also add to that I think I totally agree with both of you. I didn't feel like the film worked at all, and I think for me, one of the reasons that the film didn't work was in the book, one of the most frightening aspects of the book really isn't necessarily always the clown. It's the horrible, horrible real things that happen to
right.
these kids
real
over and over
things.
again. The bully and the parents and stuff like that. And I don't know, for me, maybe it was the fact that the director, what's his name?
Andy
Muschietti. Yeah, he's coming from like the big budget commercial kind of like bland world of horror, and I feel like his kind of instinct was, oh, people are scared of clowns, let me jam pack in as many clown moments as I can to the sacrifice of the actual emotional development of the kids. So you see the kids, and it is the kids' story, but they're spending so much time putting in these trailer moments into the film that you really don't get a lot of time with the kids to care about them when things happen.
Real situations.
And some of it's ridiculous. It's like, oh my God, he's scared about the leper.
Yeah, like why? I don't know who this kid is really, because you haven't really gone in depth, so I don't know why
It's like,
this
is
is
that a
happening.
leper? Is that a zombie? And then you spend the whole time figuring out what the hell's what.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like clown over and over
But if
again.
it makes a lot of money and people want to make more horror films, and I'll say that about elevated genre as well, it makes me very happy.
Totally.
Because it's the idea of your personal taste.
Totally.
But yes.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to address that in just a second, because that's, for me, I completely disagree with that. But Nick, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I think that you can't put it all on Andy Muschietti either. That was a big movie, and lots of people.
Lots of expectations.
They also inherited that script.
Right. It's just the reality of the way movies are made, and you have producers, and you have studio people, and as much as that's a Hollywood cliche, it really does happen. And those people, I always think of, it couldn't have less to do with this conversation or whatever, but I always think about Moulin Rouge, where they have the Duke, who's going to be their financier, and at the end of the song, the impresario says, "And on top of your fee, you'll be involved artistically." Like, that's why a lot of people are in those positions. It's not because they're good at finding the dough, right, or whatever. It's because they have an artistic bring to bear that they want heard, and they get put in those positions. I mean, I think it is fair. I looked it up for the purposes of this panel. Stephen King is the #1 living author in terms of adaptations. Shakespeare is all time, as you might expect. I think it also is fair to say at this point that his novels and all of his work are incredibly difficult to adapt for a lot of these reasons.
The Shining with Cooper.
Well, too, and I mean, you hear the story about that too, is that Stephen King hated it because he didn't think it had anything to do with his novel. ABC did a...
But then they made it in 97.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
ABC
like a
did a
TV
miniseries
movie.
version of it. God knows why. Like, you would do that on network TV that hewed way closer to the, whatever. I mean, I think in terms of it, it's interesting when you're talking about what makes that work scary and what perhaps didn't work, and obviously, you can't. Now, I always thought it was so funny, like growing up, because I never had. It was like only in the last year did I realize that other people knew that book had a child orgy scene in it. I thought that was my dirty secret about that book that I remember that nobody else knew about, which of course they did. If you think about where that falls in the book, it comes very, very late, and it comes very, very close. It's obviously a flashback. It happens very close to the ultimate climax of that, which one could posit is because, maybe one of the scariest things about that book, it certainly was if you read it when you're 12 like I did, is not that, the teeth or whatever, the spider or whatever it is, it's that they all have extremely underage
It's
sex.
the loss of innocence.
Right,
that plays a huge theme in
Pet
it,
Sematary is another one where there's an incredibly sexual entendre that's made really, really late in that novel. I won't say what it is, but that to me was the most horrifying thing about that book. That line will never be in a movie version of that film. The only one little thing that I want to just add to that, and I'll stop, is that I do think what's interesting and what I would like to see happen with Stephen King is a lot of times the bigger books, right, that are in his lexicon are treated commensurately in terms of the size of the film that gets made. So it is a huge book. It begets a huge movie. There's novellas and there's short stories and so forth. 1922 is a good example. I love 1922.
Yeah.
It's an awesome movie. Ton of
the character he puts out there.
Awesome.
It's on Netflix.
What I would like to
So
see
good.
happen, and again, who the hell knows how you even do this or if it's possible. But I'd like to see more of an indie sensibility, or indie films even, which is to say low budget, no real stars, perhaps like not as much wherewithal in terms of what you can do, because once you can do it in terms of CGI, you have to do it.
How expensive is it to buy those rights, though?
Right, for some of the bigger, well, that's true too, certainly. But for some of the bigger works, to see smaller movies get made out of the bigger books, as opposed to, okay, well, we have this huge, this is one of the best known properties that he's known for, it's got to be a $5 million movie. You can't make it for $500,000. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I mean, Gerald's Game was a really good, in
Gerald's Game.
Netflix, I don't know their budget, but that's one of those ones where I felt like you could have made it for $500,000 predominantly in one location.
You could almost make it as like a stage.
Yeah.
Very much.
I mean, they did.
They did a really good job with it. I was surprised, actually.
But here's, if I may throw something in, here's the question though. It's about money, right? Money tells all. Money controls all, right? Right? You have The Dark Tower, you have it. 2 films that have been panned by a lot of people. Yet it makes a lot of money, opens it up to a lot of people who aren't necessarily horror fans. Just money-making fans. And that's the question right there. It's great to cheer for money. It's great to say, oh, they're making all these millions of dollars. Problem is, are you going to say that in 5 years when every Stephen King adaptation is out and it's whitewashed, and every Stephen King adaptation is out and they cut the book to ribbons? Kubrick did an amazing job. I think everyone in this room would agree that The Shining is a great film. And he's a great director. And his vision, that how many decades ago was that? It's not modern day, folks. It's not even close to modern day. Before, because I think we have 10 minutes left in there, something like that. Real quick to the crowd. Any thoughts before we close it out? Good.
Another thing, I mean, it goes back to that point of diversity coming out of movies. It kind of comes from, it seems from the outside anyway, from producers misunderstanding what made something successful. Like the fear that we're going to get out 6 years from now, and the lesson that's learned isn't that white audiences could empathize with the strait of a black man in America and be frightened by it. They're going to say what made it successful was a horror film released in an early spring slot. So we get it with just seems like the wrong lessons get learned.
Although I think that happens a lot. I mean, we're talking about the cyclical nature of films. I mean, what you see is somebody makes an awesome film that pushes boundaries and it's really interesting, and then everybody apes that film. Like found footage, whether or not you liked Blair Witch, it broke ground. It did something that nobody else had done, and then everybody did it, and now the market is saturated. Somebody else will come along and react to that and do something else, hopefully. And I agree with that. I think that there are dangers with that, but I think that that's something that happens regardless, and not just in the horror genre. I feel like that happens all over the place. That mimicry and that dilution of whatever it was originally that made that thing powerful will happen, and it's something that you just have to fight against by being continuously creative.
You know what, as we wrap it up here, and again, I want to thank everyone involved, the panelists, the crowd out there. Thank you so much for coming out to Fear NYC. Here's a thought to ponder. Who is that next master of horror? I'll throw it out first because I've had a chance to meet him face to face. His work speaks for himself. I think Mike Flanagan is that next master of horror. He's not traditionally a horror filmmaker. He is a storyteller. And Gerald's Game is a great example of that kind of film. Gerald's Game really is kind of a stage play. The way it's put in there, and the great thing about it is that the actors that are in there aren't shiny and new, and that's a theme in it, that they're not shiny and new. Mm-hmm. They're just very talented, and they understood and they embraced what the material was about. And everything that Mike Flanagan has done, from Absentia to Oculus to Ouija 1 or 2, I lose track of the Ouija movies, to Before I Wake, which probably will never see the light of day because of what relatively went with bankruptcy, to Gerald's Game, to more stuff, to The House on Haunted Hill, which he's doing the TV show for. So he is as diverse, a wonderful storyteller, and especially with Hush, he's able to tap into things that we all understand and really go outside the box, which is something that in the system that we've been talking about, Hollywood, is something that they don't do. So, and his producer loves him. His producer have been together a long time, and he backs everything he does, which is a very big rarity. So, we'll go down the line. Tyler, to you. Who is that next master?
I was going to say Mike Flanagan.
You can say Mike Flanagan. Why? By all means, why? I give second vote, third vote, fourth. Go.
I mean, I recently watched Hush for the first time, and it blew me away. And it's just, I mean, I had never seen anything like that before. So, that's my answer.
All right. Oh.
I totally see the argument for Mike Flanagan. I would say if I was going to be totally truthful, I'm not sure I have an answer to that yet.
Fair enough.
I tell people to hire Roxanne Benjamin. I'm a big fan of hers. I remember seeing, I think Southbound came out last year, and to me it was like a return to like 1993 horror, like Demon Night kind of horror. And I've always really loved her work, and I'd want to see her make more and more feature films because I think she has a lot of she'd be great to work with on set. She's very organized, and I just think the type of genre that she's attracted to. So I always tell people, it's like if you want to hire someone to make your horror film, you should hire Roxanne Benjamin.
I really like Roxanne. We tried to get her. I was like, darn it. But I would say because of the quantity, the amount that he's done, James Wan.
Okay.
Purely because of that. I mean, I like his films, but if you're looking at how many films someone has made in the genre, I would say he would be one of my top choices.
He's like a 5-tool player in everything. You've got everything connect with him. Success, he's a minority.
Right,
he's
exactly.
able to work with different people, and he's able to pull in multiple franchises.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, Robert Eggers and Trey Edward Schultz are the two guys that I love. I know Roxanne. I love Roxanne. Can't wait to see what she does next. Also, the most recent movie that really blew me away in the horror genre was The Void. There's two directors behind that.
The Strong Six guys, right?
Yeah, Jeremy Gillespie.
Yeah. But I certainly would be excited to see what all of those people come up with.
Any final comments? Go ahead, I'm Frank.
This is not a question, but this is also, I'd like to throw in a few people who have consistently impressed me. This one may be a little obvious, Guillermo del Toro is, but also two people who I think are more recent than him. Nacho Vigallando.
Colossus. Yes.
Yes, and also Ben Wheatley. And also, and just speaking of Ben Wheatley, the actress in Sightseers, whose name escapes me.
Alison Lowe.
Yes,
Prevenge.
she just came out with Prevenge, and Prevenge was amazing. And given the fact that as an actress and a first-time director, she's been working in horror, I was really hoping that she continues with that sort of material because it was brilliant. It was breathtaking.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Julia Dockernow, I think I was not as blown away with Raw as other people were. I think in a post-Cronenberg world, with Cronenberg being the top of the body horror sort of subgenre, I thought that was a good entry into it. Her movie, Raw, is a really good-looking movie. And I think for starting with something that you're more comfortable with, and obviously she's a fan of that subgenre, I think that she has places that she can go. From there, if she keeps building, I think she's definitely somebody that can become a big player if she keeps progressing on the path that she's on.
I will also throw Ed Sanchez into the mix because Ed Sanchez is so diverse, and instead of sitting there on the success of Blair Witch, he went out and he's done, and my personal favorite is Lovely Molly. Lovely Molly is so haunting, so terrifying, and Gretchen Mol is so amazing in that film. Anyone else?
Osgood Perkins.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I Am the Pretty Thing.
That lives in the house, and
it's
Black
so
Coat's daughter is phenomenal.
He's so good. And folks, filmmakers, story. I can't say enough because all these filmmakers craft incredible story, incredible atmosphere. Yes, we'll close out. Last one.
Does anyone remember the name of the guy behind Stakeland, Mulberry Street?
Jim Mickle.
That's Jim Mickle.
Yes.
Although he's kind of moved out of the horror genre at this point.
Yeah, but I'm sure he will be back. I mean,
it doesn't mean he's not going to come back at some point.
But talk about rats. Mulberry Street, how many blocks down? Rats, man, rats. Anyone else? I want to thank everyone out there, everyone here for the panel.